Hashtag Chapter 1, Cast Aside. The galaxy had already written humanity's obituary. Asterisk too fragile. Too emotional. Too slow to evolve. Asterisk the Council of 12 had declared in polished tones before turning their ships away. To them, Earth's people were an evolutionary accident, interesting only in the way one might admire a beetle that managed to balance on its back legs before getting crushed underfoot. But the official record omitted one detail: humans heard everything. The outpost world of Syndrome 4 spun silently on the rim of the Sagittarius Arm, its skies scarred with smoke from the last Council evacuation ship. They hadn't even bothered to cloak their laughter as they departed. The message was simple: asterisk you are on your own. Die quickly so we don't have to clean up the mess, asterisk. Commander Elias Kane sat on a battered folding chair in front of the command dome, sipping coffee from a chipped NASA mug. Behind him, the base still smoldered from orbital bombardment. In front of him, an alien surveillance drone floated at a cautious distance, recording his final hours. Kane raised the mug toward the drone as though toasting. Morning. Beautiful day for extinction, isn't it? The drone hummed, confused. Somewhere on the other end of its transmission line, alien officials leaned forward, curious. Humans weren't supposed to joke. They were supposed to beg, scream, collapse. Kane smiled, the kind that could pass for warmth until one noticed the calculation in his eyes. Inside the council chambers, light years away, representatives replayed the humans' greeting. A tall, crystalline Yelthian scoffed. See? Even their commander accepts defeat. Their humor is a mask for terror. From the shadows, an elder Scoran shook his avian head. You misunderstand. That one isn't afraid. He's waiting. Laughter drowned him out. Asterisk waiting? For what, asterisk? Back on Syndrome 4, Kane set the mug down and called over his shoulder. Status, Sergeant? A woman's voice replied from inside the dome. Systems patched with duct tape and a prayer. Shields at 42%. Ammo, let's not talk about ammo. Kane chuckled softly. That's practically a surplus. The drone bobbed uncertainly, recording every word. Hashtag the betrayal. Only weeks earlier, Kane had stood in the council chamber himself. The scene replayed in his mind as clearly as the scarred horizon before him. The 12 sat in their semicircle, gazes cool and condescending. Humanity's plea had been simple: asterisk help us defend our border colony. We will stand beside you, asterisk. The chair being had tapped its many-jointed fingers. We appreciate your enthusiasm, but your species lacks the durability required. Our fleets cannot be risked for those who will fall regardless. Withdraw. Accept extinction with dignity. Kane had smiled then too, inclining his head as if accepting a teacher's scolding. Of course. We wouldn't want to inconvenience you. The transcript noted nothing unusual. What it missed was the steel beneath the words, the subtle pause before Kane added. We do not abandon our own. Hashtag alien banter. Hours after the Council's abandonment, enemy ships descended on Syndrome 4, confident they'd find humans already broken. Instead, scouts reported strange behavior. Humans repaired shattered vehicles with metal scraps. They roasted alien fungus over open flames, seasoning it with improvised sauces. Children played games in bombed-out streets, laughing. Council watchers couldn't interpret it. To them, laughter was a sign of madness. One reptilian observer sneered, "They're deranged. Who jokes while starving?" Another replied, uneasy, "Predators often laugh before striking." Hashtag the human mask. As the sun dipped low, Kane walked the perimeter. Every soldier he passed wore the same expression, grins just a shade too wide, eyes too sharp. He murmured encouragement, told jokes about baseball, about fast food chains that no alien would ever understand. It looked like levity. It was camouflage. "Commander," his sergeant whispered as they met by the northern barricade, "they think we're weak. They're laughing at us." Kane's grin faded a fraction. "Good. Let them laugh. A laughing enemy never sees the knife." The drone's question. At midnight, the alien surveillance drone projected a shimmering figure, a Zelvari officer, smug and condescending. "Commander Kane," the hologram began, "your resistance is admirable, if pointless. Why prolong the inevitable? Surrender, and we may preserve a fragment of your culture in our archives." Kane tilted his head, polite as ever. "A fragment? That's generous. Maybe a diorama? A few of us in glass cases, smiling while you explained to tourists how weak we were?" The Zelvari sneered. "You mistake cruelty for humor." "No," Kane replied evenly. "I mistake you for someone who understands what's coming." The officer frowned. "And what is coming, human?" Kane leaned closer to the drone. His voice dropped into a tone that made every alien listener stiffen. "You'll see soon enough." Foreshadowing. Inside the command dome, Kane finally sat at the holotable with his officers. Maps of orbital paths and enemy supply lines glowed faintly. One lieutenant tapped a system marker. "Sir, if we strike here, they'll think it's desperation." Kane's eyes gleamed. "Exactly. Desperation makes them arrogant. Arrogance makes them sloppy. Sloppy gets them killed." He tapped the mud beside him, now half empty. "They believe they left us to die. But they've already stepped into our trap. They just don't know it yet." His sergeant frowned. "And if the trap fails?" Kane smiled again, warmth returning like a mask sliding back into place. "Then we improvise." After all, he lifted the mug in a toast to his weary crew. "We do not abandon our own." The line hung in the smoky air, echoing louder than any battle cry. Somewhere across the stars, the council analysts replayed the recording again and again, unsettled by the calm certainty in the human's tone. For the first time, they began to wonder if perhaps they had made a mistake. Chapter 2, The Laughing Survivors. The alien observers expected silence. By now, humans should have been too weak to move, their colony a graveyard of ash. Instead, the drones circling Syndrome 4 broadcasted scenes that baffled every council chamber across the galaxy. Children drew chalk lines on cracked pavement, turning bomb craters into hopscotch boards. Adults argued over whether roasted fungus tasted closer to chicken or beef, holding informal taste tests beside smoking ruins. And always, there was laughter. Alien confusion. On the council's monitoring ship, a silver-skinned Zelvari captain glared at the holofeed. "They're laughing while starving," he hissed. "It's derangement." Beside him, a Squaran elder clacked his beak softly. "Or it's a signal. Predators laugh to unnerve prey." The captain snorted. "They're prey. Look at them. No claws, no armor, brittle bones." From the shadows, a junior officer whispered, "Then why do they keep smiling?" Improvisation. Commander Kane stood in the heart of the wrecked barracks, sleeves rolled up, grease staining his uniform. Before him, half a dozen soldiers hammered scavenged plating onto what had once been a civilian shuttle. Now, with duct tape, wire, and sheer audacity, it was becoming a gunship. One private tightened a bolt with his teeth and muttered, "Sir, this is insane." Kane grinned. "Correction, this is American engineering. All we're missing is a roll of WD-40 and a country music playlist." Laughter rippled through the crew. The drone recording them swiveled, confused by the joke. Hashtag small skirmish. That night, the first test came. A squadron of light Zelvari fighters descended, certain that a single pass would end human resistance. Kane received the transmission on the main screen. The enemy pilot smirked. "Commander, you've delayed long enough. Surrender now, and we'll end this quickly." Kane set down his mug, as though the interruption were mildly inconvenient. "Friend, I'd love to surrender, but we've just started a barbecue. Be ashamed to waste all that meat." The pilot blinked. "Bar-Q?" "Long story," Kane replied. "Tell you what, why don't you swing by and I'll save you a plate?" The alien sneered, cutting transmission. Moments later, the fighters dove. And just as suddenly, the ground erupted, mines disguised as wreckage, jury-rigged missile launchers firing in perfect sync. 2 fighters exploded instantly, another spiraled into the canyon wall. The surviving pilot's screams echoed across the comms, "They're not supposed to fight like this." Hashtag reactions. Council observers leaned forward, shocked. How did they construct defenses? Their supply lines were cut. They used garbage, one muttered in disbelief, watching humans reload with scavenged metal pipes. Kane's voice came through the intercepted channel, crisp and polite. "Gentlemen, thank you for dropping by. Do travel safe on your way home." Static followed. The surviving alien ships fled. Hashtag masks and truth. Later, in the command dome, Sergeant Ruiz wiped blood from her cheek and stared at the smoking battlefield. "Sir, we got lucky." Kane shook his head. "Luck favors preparation. They thought we were broken. That mistake is going to cost them." Ruiz frowned. "But they'll send more. Whole fleets." "That's the idea," Kane said softly. She blinked. "The idea?" Kane's smile didn't reach his eyes. "They need to believe we're desperate survivors. Desperation makes them reckless. Reckless enemies walk right into traps." Hashtag alien fear. Back on the council ship, the Zelvari captain slammed his fist on the console. "This is unacceptable. Primitive improvisation cannot defeat trained pilots." The Scoran elder tilted his head. "Perhaps you underestimated them. Perhaps you abandoned something you should have feared." The captain hissed. "Fear? Of these soft-skinned jokes?" The elder clacked his beak once, eyes fixed on Kane's smiling face on the feed. "Yes. Of jokes that kill." Hashtag the meal. That evening, soldiers gathered around a makeshift fire. A slab of alien fungus sizzled on scavenged plating. Spirits lifted, laughter loud enough for drones to catch every word. A corporal sniffed and said, "Tastes like rubber dipped in old socks." "Better than cafeteria food back home," another shot back. Kane raised his mug. "To survival." The soldiers echoed the toast. But Kane's eyes never left the horizon, where faint glimmers marked the approach of more enemy ships. Hashtag polite threats. The next morning, another drone projected a Zelvari officer, jaw tight with frustration. "Commander Kane, your resistance is futile. Continued defiance will only prolong your suffering." Kane folded his hands behind his back, voice mild. "We do appreciate your concern. Though, between you and me, suffering is sort of our specialty." The officer sneered. "Your bravado is meaningless." Kane's smile sharpened. "So is your fleet, if it insists on poking this bear." The officer froze. The phrase carried no translation. The AI rendered it literally, prodding an apex predator while it sleeps. Silence. Then the hologram flickered out. Hashtag private reflection. When the others slept, Kane remained awake, reviewing star charts. Alone, his mask slipped. His face hardened, humor gone. Every decision was cold calculation. He marked enemy supply routes, projected fleet movements, and whispered to himself, Stage 1 complete. On the desk, his mug sat half full. The cheerful words printed on its side, *World's Best Dad*, caught the dim light. Kane's lips curved faintly. Not warmth. Not humor. Something sharper. This isn't defense, he murmured. This is bait. Hashtag council's doubt. At the same time, the council convened an emergency session. Representatives argued, voices rising. They were supposed to be fragile. They shouldn't be capable of resistance. And yet they laugh, the Scorn elder said quietly. The chamber fell into uneasy silence. On the holoscreen, humans toasted fungus around a fire, smiling, joking, alive. The elder leaned forward. You wanted them to die quickly. Instead, you've given them a reason to fight forever. The laughter of survivors carried across the stars, echoing louder than any fleet's engines. Chapter 3, The Trap. The council chamber reeked of fear. Delegates bickered, claws clicking, mandibles grinding, voices layered with panic. Every new report contradicted the last, human survivors holding out, human weapons springing from rubble, human laughter echoing across battlefield comms. This is impossible, hissed the Zelvari representative. They were meant to be erased. The Scorn elder spread his wings slowly. You left predators cornered. And now you're surprised they bite? Hashtag a new game. On Syndrome 4, Kane studied a holographic map projected over the command table. Enemy supply lines glowed red, converging on a system of empty stars nearby. Sergeant Ruiz frowned. That system's a wasteland. No planets. No resources. Why bait them there? Kane's eyes gleamed. Because it looks useless. They'll think we're desperate enough to hide there. Desperation invites overconfidence. Ruiz crossed her arms. And if they don't chase? They'll chase, Kane said simply. Bullies always do. Hashtag council debate. Far away, the 12 convened. The Zelvari captain argued for annihilation fleets. We must strike before their defiance spreads. Other species watch this closely. If humans survive, it undermines the council. A feline delegate licked her fangs. Then crush them. Send everything. The Scorn elder clicked his beak. Be careful. The more you send, the more you risk losing. These humans, they plan while smiling. The chamber erupted in derision. Plan? From primitives, Yet unease lingered. Hashtag the invitation. The next broadcast from Kane arrived not as a plea but a welcome. He appeared on the council's secure channel, seated comfortably at his command table, mug in hand. Ladies, gentlemen, assorted tentacled overlords, he began with a warm smile. We'd like to extend an invitation. You've worked hard trying to wipe us out. We thought it only fair to give you a real chance. The delegates stared in disbelief. An invitation? Kane leaned forward. We're withdrawing to the Bellner system. No cover, no reinforcements. If you want to finish us, meet us there. The channel cut. Gasps filled the chamber. Some cried trap. Others laughed at the arrogance. But in the end, the decision was unanimous, fleets mobilized. Hashtag the dead system. Bellner's star was a pale ghost, its planets long stripped bare by ancient wars. Nothing lived there. No reason for anyone sane to linger. Except humans. Kane's fleet drifted among asteroid fields, ships patched together with scavenged armor, hulls scarred but engines humming. From a distance, they looked crippled. Up close, every weapon port hid a surprise. Sergeant Ruiz approached Kane at the observation deck. "They'll come in force. We're outnumbered 5-1. Kane sipped his coffee. "Perfect odds. Means fewer will make it home to spread the story." Ruiz shook her head. "Sometimes I think you enjoy this." He smiled faintly. "I enjoy winning. Hashtag arrival of the hunters." The alien armada arrived like a tidal wave, dozens of cruisers, carriers, and swarms of fighters blotting out the stars. The Zelvari commander hailed them. "Human Kane. This ends now. You cannot hope to resist." Kane appeared calm, even friendly. "Oh, I never said resist. I said invite. Hospitality's a human tradition, you know. You came all this way, it'd be rude not to offer you dinner." The translator AI struggled, spitting the word *premial. Confusion rippled across enemy comms. Then the mines detonated. Hashtag the springing of the trap. Asteroids exploded with hidden charges, flinging shrapnel into fighter swarms. Gravitational snares powered by jury-rigged drives tore ships from formation. Human frigates, thought crippled, came alive with concealed cannons, tearing through exposed holes. The Council's fleet buckled instantly. Kane's voice cut through open channels, polite as a dinner host. "Careful where you step, friends. Floor's a little unstable." An alien cruiser erupted, flame blooming across the void. Hashtag shock and fury. In the council chamber, horror spread as reports poured in. They prepared the battlefield. They turned the entire system into a weapon. They can't have had resources. The Scorn Elder's voice was quiet but sharp. They had time. And time is all predators need to sharpen their teeth. Hashtag duel of words. Back on the battlefield, the Zelvari commander snarled across comms. "You tricked us." Kane tilted his head politely. "We gave you a choice. You chose arrogance. Never blame the trapper when you walked into the cage. You'll pay for this." Kane's smile chilled. "On the contrary, I think you've already paid." Hashtag ruthlessness revealed. Human ships moved with terrifying coordination. What looked like patched hulls were layered armor. What looked like broken weapons were decoys hiding missile racks. Every strike was calculated, every sacrifice intentional. Kane gave orders softly, almost conversationally, as though guiding a friend through a chess match. When one human frigate exploded to shield the fleet, he murmured, "They bought us 30 seconds. Use it well." His voice never wavered. Hashtag the moment of realization. Half the alien fleet burned. The rest faltered, commanders shouting contradictory orders. Sergeant Ruiz glanced at Kane. "They're breaking." Kane's grin sharpened. "Not yet. Let them taste escape before we close the jaws." He activated the final sequence. Hidden satellites powered up, beams slicing across retreating vessels. Alien voices screamed across comms, *, it was never about survival. It was a trap from the beginning. *. Kane's reply was calm, almost kind. "Now you're catching on." Hashtag silence in the aftermath. When the battle ended, the Bellner system was littered with wreckage. Alien survivors limped away, terrified whispers already spreading. Humans weren't weak, humans weren't prey, they were something else entirely. Kane stood at the viewport, hands clasped behind his back. Ruiz broke the silence. "What now?" Kane's voice was steady. Now they know. And knowing is worse than dying. The trap had sprung, and the galaxy would never laugh at humanity again. Chapter 4, We do not abandon our own. The Belner system hung silent. Burned wreckage drifted through the void, glowing faintly against the pale star. Hundreds of alien ships lay shattered, their once proud hulls reduced to ash and twisted metal. The battle was over, but the silence screamed louder than gunfire. Commander Elias Kane stood at the viewport of the flagship, shoulders squared, mug in hand as though he were watching a sunset rather than the aftermath of a massacre. Sergeant Ruiz stepped up beside him, helmet tucked under her arm. Her voice was low, almost reverent. Half the fleet gone. The rest fled. Kane sipped his coffee. And they'll talk. Good. She frowned. You wanted survivors. His smile flickered, sharp as broken glass. A story spreads faster than wreckage. The speech. Hours later, the human transmission went live across the galactic network. Every species that had laughed at Earth now watched the human commander framed in the light of ruined ships behind him. Kane's tone began soft, almost apologetic. To the esteemed Council of 12. I'd like to thank you. You left us here, alone, weak, certain we'd vanish quietly. That was your mistake. You see, humans don't vanish. We endure. His voice hardened, each word carrying weight. You thought us fragile because we bleed. You thought us helpless because we laugh. But we laugh in the dark because fear has no power when you share it. We fight with scraps because scraps are enough. And we never, ever abandon our own. The feed captured his eyes, steady and unblinking. You call us primitive. Perhaps. But primitives taught themselves to hunt giants with sticks. You cast us aside as weak. And now you will live with the memory of what happens when you do. The message ended. No threats. No demands. Just the silence of a man who had shown the galaxy what his people truly were. Alien reactions. In the council chambers, unease spread like infection. The Zelvari ambassador's voice cracked. This cannot stand. Humanity must be exterminated completely. The Scorn elder fixed him with a piercing gaze. Exterminate them? You just sent your fleet, and half of it drifts as corpses. What will you send next, your entire species? Others murmured in fear. Some whispered admiration. A few quietly calculated how quickly they could propose alliances with the predators wearing human smiles. One delegate shuddered. They smiled through the whole thing. That is not weakness. That is warning. The weight of loyalty. On board the human flagship, soldiers gathered in the mess hall, exhausted but alive. Wounds were bound, laughter cracked through the tension. Someone had managed to salvage a guitar, strumming clumsy chords. Kane entered, raising his mug. You did well. More than well. You reminded the galaxy of something they forgot. Family fights harder than fear ever can. A young private asked, voice trembling, Sir, was it worth it? All this loss? Kane's smile was faint, tired. Worth it? Every life paid for a promise. We don't leave anyone behind. That's who we are. That's why we're still here. The room fell silent, soldiers holding onto that truth like armor. Whispered legends. Across the stars, survivors of Belner spoke in hushed tones. They baited us. They smiled while springing the trap. They fight like predators wrapped in politeness. Stories spread faster than council edicts. Colonies on the rim whispered about the smiling predators of Earth. Mercenaries refused contracts that involved fighting humans. Some alien children began daring one another, laugh in the dark, like a human. The myth was already forming, a legend written in wreckage and fear. Hashtag the private mask. Late that night, Kane sat alone in his quarters, maps glowing faintly on his desk. For once, the mug was empty. He turned it slowly in his hands, tracing the faded letters, "World's Best Dad." For the first time since the betrayal, his smile slipped completely. His face was carved from stone, tired and unflinching. Sergeant Ruiz entered quietly. "Sir, you should rest." He didn't look up. Rest comes after the message is written in every star. Not before. She hesitated, then asked, "And what message is that?" Kane finally looked at her, eyes cold and certain. "That no one abandons humanity. Ever. Because we do not abandon our own." Hashtag the irony of peace. Weeks later, council delegates arrived at Earth under the banner of truce. Their posture was stiff, respectful in a way it had never been before. They found Kane waiting at a long table, a spread of barbecue, beer, and sweet tea laid out. He rose, smiling with the easy charm that now terrified half the galaxy. "Welcome, friends. Pull up a chair. Try the ribs. You'll find humans are excellent hosts, so long as you don't betray us." The delegates exchanged uneasy glances, then slowly sat. Kane lifted his mug. "To family." Hashtag epilogue. Children on Earth played in fields again, their laughter carried into the sky. Somewhere, deep space travelers told tales of humans who lured armadas to dead stars and left only silence behind. And always, at the center of those stories, was the same refrain. They do not abandon their own.